much for coming out. My name is FRSO, and we are here today to have a panel in honor of International Women's Day. This event is being hosted by the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. So we have an awesome group of speakers here. I will be introducing them momentarily. I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about the history of International Women's Day. It actually has its origins in New York City. There was the International Ladies Garment Workers. It was a union who went on strike to demand better wages and a safe working environment. They went on strike starting on March 8th, and they actually held out for 13 weeks until they were ultimately successful. And the leader, a German socialist leader by the name of FRSO, proposed to begin a mass gathering of women on every March 8th after that, and this eventually became International Women's Day. And initially it was used as a means to try to further the right to get women to vote. And it started to pick up steam in Germany actually, and quickly spread globally. And throughout the world, women would gather, they would hold talks, they would go on strike and continue the fight for women's rights and equality. And in 1917, in St. Petersburg on International Women's Day, they were actually holding it on February 23rd. So a group of women in honor of International Women's Day went on strike. And what happened was that they were joined. And people left their jobs, left their factories, and they went out the streets. They demanded an end to World War I, an end to food shortages, and the end of Tsarism. And this started the February Revolution. And as one Russian activist later said, the 23rd of February was International Women's Day. Meetings and actions were foreseen, but we did not imagine that this Women's Day would inaugurate the revolution. So one of the reasons I'm so happy to see everybody here, I'm so happy to have this panel of speakers, is that International Women's Day has it's changed a lot since then. In a lot of the countries where women used to go on strike and demand the vote and host revolutions, it's become this kind of more combination of Mother's Day and Valentine's Day. And men bring chocolates and flowers for their wives and for their girlfriends, and children draw cards for their mothers, which is all very sweet, but that's not what International Women's Day needs to be about. Anybody can tell you I love candy probably more than I should, but I figure I would rather earn equal pay to a man, and then I can get myself to the store and I can buy my own candy and enjoy it just as much as I please, and thank you very much. I would like to read a quote that was this was found on it was printed on a German poster advertising a rally for International Women's Day on March 8, 1914. Until now, attitudes recognizing the natural inferiority of women have denied full civic rights to women who, as workers, mothers, and citizens, wholly fulfill their duty, who must pay their taxes to the state as well as to the municipality. Fighting for this natural human right must be the firm, unwavering institution of every woman, every female worker. And this, no cause for rest, no respite is to be allowed. That was over 100 years ago. And every word of that strikes true, at least in my ears. So that is why I'm so happy to see so many faces here. And I am so very grateful to every one of my speakers, and I'm so proud of the work you guys have done. Because it's time. It's time. We have enough Hallmark holidays. We're going to take back International Women's Day for women, and as we saw in the case of the Soviet Union, for the people as a whole. So, thank you. And with that, I would like to introduce my first speaker. Our first speaker is Sama. Sama is a cis female student and a Lima freshman at the University of Utah, was born and raised in Salt Lake City. She is passionate about a variety of issues under the umbrella of social justice, including transnational feminist issues, LGBTQ issues, racial justice, environmental justice, reproductive rights, and refugee rights. She has rallied against police brutality in the USA and the Zionist occupation of Palestine. She's involved with the Muslim Students Association and Asian American Students Association on her campus. Sama loves poetry and writing. Bear with me. I practiced it before y'all showed up to make sure I could do it when it was time to do it. I did it then, for real.
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. So today I'm just going to be talking a little bit about Muslim women issues, Islamic feminism, and just my experiences as being an Asian American woman within the society that I live in today. So before I start, I just want to say I'm going to be talking about Islamic feminism, but I'm no way an expert on Islamic feminism. I just want to talk about how Islamic feminism has helped me live as a Muslim woman, how it's made it easier, how it's going to make it easier for Muslim women in the future to live. So I want to start with my basic definition of feminism, and this is by Barbara Smith. Feminism is a political theory and practice that struggles to free all women. Anything less than this vision of total freedom is not feminism, but merely female self-aggrandizement. And I believe that this definition should also include sexual and gender minorities. It's incredibly important that feminism is intersectional and that it involves all women. So my introduction to feminism began last summer, and that's when I spoke to an amazing woman at my Muslim youth camp that I go to every summer. And so I have always been interested in women's issues since I was a really young girl, but I never really understood feminism until I spoke to her. And she's a woman who dedicates her life to studying gender issues and helping immigrant, refugee, and Muslim women. And the ease at which she would quote different feminists and identify issues of sexism within our Muslim community was what really inspired me to look into feminism and to read more feminist literature. When I had returned from camp, she emailed me this long compilation of resources, of books and PDFs. And so my introduction to feminism was really valuable. I started by reading Audre Lorde, Hooks, Patricia Hill Collins, and Chandra Mohanty. These are all really important women if you want to have a good introduction to feminism. And I also read a book called Bridge Called My Back, and it completely changed my point of view when it came to women of color's feminism and their voices, and how a lot of the time their voices are erased. So with this feminist point of view, I began to view the world differently, and I realized that sexism and patriarchy takes forms, many different forms, and it can morph itself. And I also realized how true it is that sexism is an institutionalized system, and it's not just separated or isolated incidents. So I don't think that Islamic feminism has a specific definition or a specific meaning. But I do think that Muslim women have to navigate several worlds when it comes to sexism. And so I think that Islamic feminism can be used as a tool to free ourselves from the different oppressions that we face, and to have our voices heard is the main reason we need this feminism. Muslim women don't need feminism because Islam is an oppressive religion, or that all Arab and brown men are oppressive and inherently sexist. We don't need feminism because we are always a victim and we need saving. And not all Muslim women are forced to live at home and have a million babies, which there's nothing wrong with being a homemaker, but there's a stereotype that a lot of Muslim women are forced to be married and stay at home, have children, cook and clean, which isn't true. None of these reasons are why I need feminism. All of these things that I listed are myths and stereotypes that have an Islamophobic sentiment. Muslim women need feminism, or at least I need feminism as a Muslim woman, because I know that Islam itself calls for equal rights for women. However, many cultures and societies have bastardized Islam, and it's taken a new form. So I just want to talk a little bit about how Islamic feminism returns to the roots of Islam. So the Quran itself says, for Muslim men and women, for believing men and women, for devout men and women, for true men and women, for men and women who are patient and constant, for men and women who humble themselves, for those who give in charity, for men and women who fast, for men and women who guard the chastity, and for men and women who engage much in God's praise. For them, God has prepared forgiveness and great reward. So just in this one verse, we can see that a lot of verses within the Quran places men and women equally. But I'm not really here to prove what the Quran says, because I myself know that Islam is equal for women. But I do want to give one incident, as I'm returning to the roots of Islam, in which the Prophet, we look towards for examples within Islam. One example that kind of demonstrates how Islam wants women to have equal rights and how Islam teaches men to respect women. So there's one story of the Prophet who was traveling with one of his companions. And they were traveling somewhere, I'm not sure where, but they encountered a beautiful woman. And the companion could not stop staring at this woman. And so this woman was asking them for directions, but the companion was just staring at her shamelessly. And so this was a very good man, but the Prophet did one thing that was a very small action which had lots of metaphorical meaning. And so when he was staring at this woman, he simply took his hand and he moved his face to the side. So just with that small action, by moving this man's face to the side, it means a lot, especially when we look towards how a lot of blame is put on women who are victims of sexual harassment and rape. He immediately took all of the blame for something that the man was doing and put it on the man. He didn't tell the woman to cover herself or to put her down for not for being by herself. He didn't put her down for that. And he understood that this was the man's fault, and by putting the blame of making the woman uncomfortable on the man. So I look at examples of the Quran and the Prophet, and then I look at my community today, and I see that I still face a lot of sexism in our community. We don't have a lot of voices within our mosque or organization, and many women, we don't feel comfortable going to the mosque anymore, especially because there are no women on boards at mosques. And there's just a lot of different things. I was at a dinner last night with Alyssa, and one of a very prominent leader within the community was speaking, and he made direct eye contact with me, and he was like, women who don't wear hijab are humiliating themselves. And so it's just little incidents like that, little microaggressions like that, which really build up and make women very uncomfortable within spaces they should be feeling safe in. So by returning back to our Islamic roots and understanding that Islam does preach equal rights for men and women, however, culture has taken a large impact on Islam. So that's one reason why Islamic feminism is really important to me. Another reason I need Islamic feminism is because I face another warped version of sexism. And this is specifically from groups of Western white feminists. So unfortunately, a lot of mainstream Western feminist groups have led people to believe that Muslim women are victims and that we need saving. So I'm going to use the example of Femin, or Femin, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's a Ukrainian feminist group who's against sex trafficking. I'm all against sex trafficking. However, the way they go about what they do is extremely inappropriate, racist, and Islamophobic. And it's what I like to call sparkly flower crowned feminism, which is feminism that doesn't do a lot. So they walk around topless, which again I'm all for. If you want to go topless, that's fine. However, what they write on their chests is things like F Islam, Viva Topless Jihad, while they wear faux turbans and beards, and they burn Salafi flags in front of the mosques. So Femin was actually really praised for a while for what they do, but what people don't realize is that this is Islamophobic, it's racist, and it enforces the stereotype that Muslim men are all oppressive and these bearded savages. So what's actually going to help Muslim women is letting Muslim women speak for themselves and to listen to Muslim women about the issues that they have. So thank you very much. And just looking at how sexism is kind of more of an institutionalized thing. If you look at the war on terror, Laura Bush made made a statement stating, "Civilized people throughout the world are speaking out in horror. Our hearts break for women." When there were congressional calls to pull troops out of Afghanistan, Bush warned, "I believe that if that were to happen, women would suffer again." So again, there's just this almost an excuse being pulled that Muslim women are oppressed and helpless, and the government kind of uses this excuse to take certain actions. And if you want to hear more about this idea, Leela Abulugod, she's written a really great essay on that. So that's kind of how I see sexism institutionalized. And then the last thing that I want to talk about is hijab. So what is hijab to me? Hijab is an incredibly controversial topic, but I found this quote, and it says, "Wearing a hijab isn't inherently liberating, but neither is wearing one's breasts. What is liberating is being able to choose either of these things. It's pretty ludicrous to think that oppression is somehow proportional to how covered or uncovered someone's body is." Both sides of this argument present a shallow understanding of women's empowerment, which only drowns out the substantive challenges facing all women, issues that cannot be encapsulated in a debate about a piece of fabric. So hijab is a very personal choice for Muslim women, and I believe that all Muslim women have the choice to wear it and to not wear it. I actually used to wear a hijab, and I enjoyed my time wearing it. Hijab is actually a concept of modesty, and it's applied to both men and women in Islam. So there's been this Western view of hijab that it's only a piece of fabric, when really it's so much deeper than that. And it's modesty within the words that you use, the actions that you use, and the way that you dress, according to Islam. So hijab can be liberating and it can be oppressive. It's the choice that you have when you wear it. And so that's basically all I have to say about Islamic feminism. As an Asian American woman, there's a lot of other issues that I face. I've been painted also as someone who is like exotic. I've been painted as submissive by other white feminists. So I'm just here to say not all Asian women are like that. Yeah, that's about all I have to
say. Thank you so much, Sabah. I really appreciate your talk. Enjoyed that. Thank you. All right, so I'm here to introduce our next speaker. I did just want to clarify, I believe I forgot to mention earlier. So what we're going to do is we're going to hear from all of our speakers in order, and then we will open it up for a Q&A session. So that's clear. All right, our next speaker is Jessica. Jessica was born and raised in Washington State as a member of the LDS Church. She moved to Utah after graduating from high school to attend Brigham Young University, at which she pursued a degree in psychology. After becoming disillusioned with her faith, Jessica feels fortunate to have found a new place to call home in Salt Lake City. She is passionate about working to improve her community and aspires to devote herself to creating a more just world for all peoples. She's a member of the Revolutionary Students Union and is an organizer under Utah Against Police Brutality. She loves her partner, her 2 cats, her preschool class, and making vegan food to share with her friends. Please join me in welcoming Jessica.
Hello. I'd like to just start by saying I am so honored to be here today, and I am honored to have the opportunity to speak on International Women's Day and celebrate it with all of you here. And very humbled to be sitting on this panel with these women who are doing amazing things in their communities. So I was born in Washington State. I was raised in a Mormon household. Feminism was never anything that I thought about growing up. In fact, if I thought about it, it was usually with like a negative perception. Just talking about feminism or the ERA in my house, they were kind of like things that were something we could laugh at, scoff at, not take seriously. And so I kind of had a journey to understanding feminism and growing myself into a feminist. And it kind of happened with the gender studies class at school, where a lot of information we went over. I had an awesome teacher who discussed many of the pertinent issues that women face today. That feminism wasn't something in the past. It wasn't something that we could stop when women receive the right to vote. That it's something that the oppression of women is something that's happening now, every day, all around the world. And that was very powerful to me, and something, just every statistic I learned, every concept we talked about, socialization of women, socialization of men, everything just resonated with me as something that I had seen my entire life and never had the vocabulary to describe or the concepts to classify those experiences under. And so then so it was kind of a long journey, but when it happened, it was fast, and I got involved a little bit with the Mormon feminists. Did a wear pants to church activity, I guess, in my ward, and overall, I felt like I couldn't pursue the things that I needed to and wanted to when I was going to school at BYU, and that I needed to leave. And so I came to Salt Lake City and found an amazing community, an amazing group of people that I am so grateful to have as friends and acquaintances and fellow organizers. And I became involved just this last summer with going to anti-war protests, pro-Palestine rallies, and I got involved with police brutality work. So when Utah Against Police Brutality started last fall, it was a pretty small group. Well, it was one organizer who kind of started collecting people and gathering people to start a movement in our community. Since then, we've had several rallies, some of which hundreds of people attended, and I've been fortunate enough to get experience organizing in my community. And so a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today is the issues of, or the experience of being a female organizer in the community. So with Utah Against Police Brutality, a campaign that I chose to take on was calling for the development of external review boards regarding police critical incidents in our communities. So basically outside investigations of police departments. And part of what I had to do as an organizer was to contact the district attorney, Sim Gill, in Salt Lake City. So after several attempts to contact him, I and a few other organizers went into his office to ask for a meeting, a citizens meeting with him, and request an appointment to come and meet with him and discuss our issues and our concerns. When we went to our meeting, or when we were there, we put out a press release letting them know that we were going into his office to request a meeting. And when the press showed up, I was there with a few male organizers, and they immediately started talking to the men around me. They started asking them, what are you doing here? What's going on? What's your goal and your purpose in being here? And a couple of times a fellow organizer had to be, this is her campaign, you need to speak with Jessica. And it was kind of a struggle to get them to discuss with me why we were there, what we were planning to do, and why we were requesting a meeting. And that's just one example, but just those challenges, those little things that I might not have even noticed if a fellow organizer had been like, well, or pointed it out afterwards, something that I would have let slide, something that's just so everyday occurrence, it didn't seem like a big deal. But that's the world that we live in as women, that we have to fight for our right to express our voices, to be heard, and to be respected in the world. And also, another instance of this kind of sexism that I've seen as an organizer was when we organized a vigil for a man who had been shot in Salt Lake City in his neighborhood. And the vigil was primarily made up of his friends and community members who came out there to support his closest friends and his partner in their loss of a loved one. And during which we kind of, we had a lot of speakers just come up. It was kind of an open forum where they could speak if they felt like they wanted to say something about this man and about the impact of his loss on their lives and on the community that they lived in. And at one point, a woman, his partner, stood up and was speaking to the group. And what she had to say was, well, she spoke first of all about her love for him, and one of the issues that she raised was that she thought that if there were more women involved in police enforcement and part of the policing of our communities, that there would be less unnecessary deaths in our communities. And whether she was right or wrong isn't really my point. But while she was speaking, men in the crowd began heckling her, scoffing at her, calling out, as she's speaking at a vigil where they were mourning the loss of her partner earlier that week. And throughout the rest of the time, there were people who stood up and said things that many of the people in the crowd disagreed with, but they were men and they were respected, and the crowd was quiet, and they were able to say what they wanted to say in peace. And I thought it was very unfortunate and just stressing that this woman wasn't able to say her piece at a vigil for her partner and for someone that she loved. And she couldn't say it with respect and with dignity, but she had to endure primarily men scoffing at her, or telling her she was wrong, telling her that her opinions were not valid. I really like that Alyssa shared that quote from the German poster from 1914, 100 years ago, because when you're looking at things like that, you realize how little we have accomplished as women, but at the same time, how strong and how resilient women are, how they take control of their communities and how much they've done as individuals, and how much in society women matter and make a difference. And I wanted to share just a few statistics that I looked up, kind of released on behalf of 2015's International Women's Day, that globally about 1/3 of women will be beaten or raped during their lifetime. That the most recent UN report on the wage gap predicted that it could take another 70 years to close the gender gap in pay. That 15 million girls in the world will be compelled to enter into marriage, and some children of the age 6 or 8. And that 1.2 million children who are trafficked into slavery, over 80% are female and girls. And only 76 countries have legislation specifically addressing domestic violence, and only 57 of those includes issues of sexual abuse. And that in more than 10 countries in the world, women must obey their husbands legally. Those are some stark statistics to think about in the year 2015. However, there are also women who have changed the world, who have made a difference, and who continue to fight for the rights of women, for the rights of oppressed peoples, for the rights of their communities and of their families. And I really love the theme, the global theme for International Women's Day this year is Make It Happen. And I think that is perfect, especially sitting here on this panel with these ladies next to me who make things happen every day, who are working to make their communities a better place, who are working within a labor struggle, within their religious communities, within LGBT movements. And although we have a long way to go, I know that we can get there. That women are strong, that women are powerful, that women have voices that need to be heard. And I hope that I can be a part of that. I think that it's important women support women, that we support one another as we grow in our competence and in our ability to influence our communities, and that supporting each other is essential to moving forward. That we have to work together, that individuals do amazing things, mind-blowing things every single day, but only under working together and building movements within our communities can we make change in the world. And I know that it's possible, I know that it can happen, and I am grateful to be taking part in that with some of the most amazing people I've ever met. I've always felt respected by only respected by my fellow organizers and the people that I associate with. And I'm so grateful to be a part of those communities who respect women and who understands the struggle of women and will support that. And that's all I have to say. Happy International Women's Day.
Well, I know we are also glad to have you on board, Jessica. Thank you. All right, and I'm here to introduce now Gabriella Anderson. Gabriella grew up in Hawaii and Washington State. She became politically radical because of Palestinian issues. She's a part of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization, and she fights the boss as a Teamster at UPS. Give it up for Gabby!
Hello, I'm Gabby. I work at UPS. I mostly do labor work, but I'm going to talk about Resmia Ode because her sentencing is coming up on the 12th, and it's generally good to get an update on that. Resmia is a Palestinian activist, a part of the American Arab Action Network in Chicago. She largely does community work with Arab women in Chicago. She started doing this by a story that she just retells over and over again because it's like this inciting moment for her. She was at the park and she saw this little girl that was crying, and she goes up to this little girl and she's like, "Why are you crying?" And she explains that her mother didn't want her to like play with the other boys or something like that. So then Resmia asks if she can go to their house later and visit her mother. And then Resmia kind of discovers in Chicago that there's a big issue with like Arab women kind of like adjusting to the United States. So Resmia forms a women's committee, which is mostly held in like working class neighborhoods. And she goes door to door to find Arab women to help them like adjust to the United States with like English classes and like citizenship classes, and then just like helping them become a part of the community. In 2013, too, Chicago Cultural Alliance named Resmia Ode like the outstanding like activist in like her community for like Chicago. So that's kind of like her influence and like the work that she's done. And then recently, a couple of years ago, I believe it was 2013, the United States brought her to court, like saying that she allegedly lied on her naturalization and citizenship papers that went through like 20 years ago. And the alleged lie was that she said that she had never been arrested. And where this comes from is when she was in Palestine in like the late 60s, she was a part of kind of like a military sweep that the Israeli military brought in. They picked up like 500 people, and Resmia was one of them, and they tortured her and raped her for 3 weeks, pushing her in, or like kind of forcing her to falsely confess to being a part of bombings that happened between Palestine and Israel. And then this was also, she was convicted by the Israeli like military force, which often has like soldiers as like the judges, and it doesn't go by like due process, and it's generally considered like unlawful. And she was in prison for 10 years in Israel. And then later on, actually, when she like got out of prison, she actually spoke in front of the UN in 1979 and talked about the torture and rape that she went through, and also redacted her confession to the crimes. But then the United States is now bringing up in court against Resmia that she was convicted of like being a part of bombings, and they got these papers from Israel, but she's fighting against them now, and in her trial, the defense asked the judge if they could speak of the torture and rape that she went through and the PTSD she has now, which is really central to the defense's case. And the judge just denied that. They said that, like, no, you cannot talk about the torture and rape. You cannot talk about how, like, Israel, like, convicted her unlawfully. He even said that, like, her torture and rape seemed credible, but he wouldn't let it be brought in court. And also, they were going to have, like, a psychologist on like PTSD come and talk for Resmia, and the judge didn't allow that either. So she was given like a blatantly unfair trial and found guilty of lying on her papers. And the result on that, as well as she was going to be in jail for like 6 months until her sentencing, but because Judge Strain decided that she did not have like a connection with like the community and she was considered a flight risk, even though she's been doing like community work for over 20 years. And some perspectives on that is that he sees her that way because she doesn't have like a husband and children, you know, but we fought that, and like, I mean, American Action Network, and said like she has like huge ties with the community, like this is her work, like come on. And she was then given a bond, which ended up actually only being like not only, but it was like a $50,000 cash bond. Usually bonds are like, you can get like a bondsman and like pay it off and such, but this was like $50 cash or $50,000 cash only to like get out. But furthermore, she did get out. And she's actually speaking at another International Women's Day in Chicago today, which is amazing. Her sentencing, though, is on March 12th, and she could be sentenced to prison for up to 10 years. I heard that, like, usually in cases like this, people get sentenced for like 1 to 2 years. So this is just like blatant like political repression on this legendary Palestinian activist and community like activist in Chicago who's done huge work for Arab women in Chicago. So we are actually also doing an event on March 12th to support Resmia while she is being sentenced. I also believe that the defense committee or defense team will be doing like an appeal, because it is just like blatantly unjust in her trial, like that she wasn't able to speak on her experiences and such. But yeah, please join us. I believe it's Thursday, right? Please join us on Thursday to support Resmia. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gabby. All right. Last but most certainly not least, we have Ms. Muna. Muna is a Jordanian-born Palestinian. She moved to the United States when she was just 1 year old. She was one of the very few non-whites growing up on the cotton candy streets of Holiday Cottonwood Heights. However, she never really identified with her cultural heritage until her family was targeted by the FBI. Following the years of the legal back and forth with the Fed, a trip to the United Arab Emirates would change her mentality forever. She came back with a sense of pride and sought to reclaim her Arab heritage. Her passion for the Palestinian cause fueled her interest in international politics and social activism. As a self-proclaimed intersectional feminist, she believes that we as women must fight together to battle oppression on all fronts. Or whether it be racial, religious, or gender, the oppressed recognize oppression from.
Thank you. I am also very honored to be here. Everyone here, thank you so much for coming. This is so important, and it's a shame that we're still battling these issues in 2015, but the struggle never ends. I just want to tell you a little bit about my story and my form of activism and how claiming your identity is in itself one of the most radical things you can do for us. So activism comes in all forms. It's an everyday occurrence, from the clothes you wear to the links you share on Facebook. Who you are, what you say, even who you associate with, are all influenced by your passions, which in turn fuel your activism. Being a woman alone automatically comes with its own set of political, social, and economic grievances. Being a woman of any color only amplifies these grievances. So my activism can be traced all the way back to May 10th, 1948, when Israel illegally declared itself a state, creating a 70-year-old legacy of physical and emotional oppression for the Palestinians and the Palestinian diaspora. In 1962, my grandparents began to crack under the pressure of the occupation. They decided to leave their little village in the West Bank and head for the oil-rich Gulf country of Kuwait. There they would live somewhat comfortably until the Gulf War again forced them out. My widowed grandmother had to take her 11 children to the more Palestinian-friendly Jordan. Though we weren't officially given refugee status, my family has seen many tough times growing up in the ghettos, and being regarded as lesser and a burden to hosting governments. One of the strongest women I know, my grandmother, had to raise 11 children virtually on her own with no means and no opportunity. I was born a man, and after that my mom decided to move to Utah, where we had better opportunities and my father had been going to school. I've grown up in a mostly Caucasian community, and I was usually indifferent to my cultural Palestinian heritage, especially after the tragic events of 9/11. Though I was quite young at the time, the social and political, along with the physical and emotional destruction caused by 9/11 would shape my mentality for the next decade. I became so emotionally detached from my roots. The Americanization process had taken a turn for the worse, and in a sense I had almost completely forgotten the importance of remembering my people's struggle. This is not an attempt to criticize my American culture in which I was raised, but rather I simply wish to convey that I was artificially imitating it, mostly the negative parts. I lost touch with the little things expected from a Middle Eastern girl. Some years later, 2006 to 2009, would prove to be some of the most trying times in my life. At just 11 years old, I watched from the staircase as the FBI barged into my house and arrested my father. The next day, the Salt Lake Tribune would read something along the lines of Salt Lake City man aiding terrorist activities. They even included a picture of my veiled aunt, because my mom doesn't wear a hijab, but you tell me what makes the better story. After years and years of battling the Fed and the FBI, I came out as confused and quite unsure of who I really was. It seemed I classified myself as American, but America classified me as Arab. It wasn't until I spent some time in the UAE that I would truly come to terms with myself. Dubai is the land I describe as where the Middle East meets the Wild West. In the perfect combination of tradition and innovation, culture, glamour, and pious and tolerant, it seemed that the city was actually a translation of who I was destined to be. I returned home and I found myself venturing out to reclaim my heritage. I relearned my native tongue of Arabic and amused myself with the history of my peoples. The struggles that the Palestinians have faced for the past 7 years taught me perseverance beyond limits, and people have shown me the capacity to overcome and become. The second stop in my soul-searching journey was realizing all the amazing aspects of my home in the U.S. Its people are willing to learn, listen, and open their minds up to new possibilities. The freedom available taught me that I could be my own person. I realized I myself was a hybrid of both Western and Middle Eastern mentality. My Palestinian blood pulses through American veins, leading to a universal heart. I just wanted to share this story with all of you because I feel like, truly, finding yourself is the ultimate revolution. As women, we are constantly under scrutiny. Society consistently tries to mold us into the idea of what the female sex ought to be. Being able to surpass all of the white noise around us and claim our identities is in itself radical activism. Today, Muslim women in the West who choose to wear hijab are just as radical as women in the East who choose not to. It's funny how a piece of garment, or how society thinks one piece of garment can completely redefine you as a woman. Like Samar was saying, women who don't, or what that occurrence with the imam that said women who don't wear hijab are humiliating. I actually also had an experience like that. I was recently in the Middle East, and first thing you know when you're in the Middle East is that you're gonna get stared at a lot. Like, especially if you're more Western looking. Like, I wear crazy lipstick, clearly, crazy makeup, crazy clothes. Like, I was a target. So guys would stare at you, pull over, try to get you in the car, like touch you, just whisper really vulgar things. And I'm expected to take it because I did not take the proper measures to prevent this from happening, and the proper measures being covering up. My whole family the whole time kept on saying, if you just wear hijab, this wouldn't be a problem. But I did a bit of a social experiment when I was in downtown Amman, and I found that after I put on my hijab, I put on the long garment, the jubab, I was still being treated just as much. And it's in these societies where we find that it's welcoming, but it's just at the same time, in these societies you find that it's not the women that's the problem, it's the men, it's the mentality, and they constantly want to put it on the women. And you're supposed to adhere to these rules of modesty, but at the same time men don't want to adhere to the rules of lower your gaze. And I feel like a lot of the time the women's biggest enemy is women themselves, because we uphold these unnecessary social constrictions. And I just feel like in order to change this, we need to start with our own little activisms. You can't force a population to change their mentality, but to redefine a mindset, you have to start with our little activisms. What we wear, what we post, all of that can change the circumstances of our gender and of people in general. Thank you.
Alrighty, I just wanted to thank you guys all so much. Everybody did a great job. Can we get one more round of applause for Alright, I think we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and we call on you just clarify who your question's for, and then ask away. Anybody have any questions? Or comments or suggestions of things they'd like to hear more about? Yes.
So this is a question for the Arab and Muslim women. Obviously, you've been in areas that are really repressive. Do you find that the West is repressive just as repressive, but in different ways? And if so, what are those different ways?
I think, like I said, I think that sexism takes forms in lots of different ways. So I think that, like Mona was talking about with men staring at her and grabbing at her, that also happens here as well. But I think that when it comes specifically to Muslim women issues, I think that the West can be really repressive. I think that people try to liberate us in the wrong ways. For example, I remember when I was wearing hijab, and a lot of my friends who wear hijab, people would try to take their hijabs off because they thought that would be liberating them from their oppressive hijab or whatever. So that's just one example of how I think that, yeah, the West can be very oppressive towards us. And I think it's just the way that they don't understand specific culture and specific religious sometimes. But I don't know if you want to expound on that.
So when I did my little experiment, I wrote all about it on Facebook, and I got a lot of comments about it. And one of them was actually from one of my moms who actually wears hijab here. And she said, you know what, how about you try that experiment here, and it's a completely different type of like harassment. And so it's just the same thing, is that how can we be so hypocritical about this? Like, but also more specifically in American culture, or Western culture in general, is we are oppressive in ways of over-sexualization. And that's also the biggest thing here, is that while there it's like over modesty, or here it's over sexualization. So which one's worse? Because over sexualization is just as oppressive, if not more. Because you're expecting me to adhere to over sexualized contexts that I'm not comfortable with. And it's like you come here out of a culture where modesty is like the most important thing to you, and you're throwing me into a culture. So it's like an identity crisis all on its own.
All right, thank you both so much.
Yes, we have a question.
I just want to ask you, what made you decide not to wear
Hijab. So when I started wearing hijab, it was almost like a social experiment. I was really young, not that young, but I was in my junior year of high school, and I just wanted to know what the experience was like, because on my father's side, almost all of the women wear hijab, and on my mother's side, they're more secular, nobody wears hijab, and I just wanted to, I wanted to experience that identity that a lot of Muslim women have with hijab. And I enjoyed it. I think that there were several reasons as to why I took it off. When I wore it, I definitely felt closer to God, I felt closer to my religion. But the community, it can be hard with the community here. I was harassed a lot from both my white friends. I was called a lot of slurs. I was harassed a lot for being Muslim. A lot of people were constantly making comments towards me. That was hard as a younger individual to take. And then also, it was just, I felt like I was held up to a different standard than a lot of people. Wearing hijab, I couldn't do a lot of things without people criticizing me. I couldn't wear certain clothing without people telling me that, you know, you wear hijab now, you can't wear tighter jeans, you can't wear like certain things. So it was hard for me as a younger person to handle so many different types of harassment. And also, you know, my closer friends were also very, like you said, women can be their own enemies. My friends were very judgmental of me, of things that came out of my mouth, of the way that I dressed, the way that I spoke. So there was a lot of stuff going on with that, and I think that every woman has a different reason for wearing hijab and for taking it off, for keeping it on. But I can see myself wearing it again maybe in the future, but at the time I think I honestly wasn't strong enough for handling like those types of tension from both sides. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, in the back.
Hi, this is actually a question for Jessica. I myself am a former Mormon or disillusioned Mormon, and one of the questions I have is just thinking about the comments made about Muslim feminists. I wonder, from your point of view or your perspective, are there perspectives that non-Mormon activists and feminists may have of Mormon women feminists, or in Mormon feminists that is problematic or needs to be addressed?
I hope I understand your question, but so you're asking like outside perceptions about Mormon women
And Mormon feminists.
And Mormon feminism. Well, it's a complicated issue for me. I have a lot of friends who are very involved in Mormon feminism. I'm a former Mormon, so I left the church, and I felt like it was I couldn't do much with that community. But I do have other people that I know who have also left the church, but are also there to support that community, which I completely respect. I think that Mormon women face their own challenges, and obviously In religion, you encounter patriarchy often, and within Mormonism, you see patriarchy as well that women face. And I think that it is a valiant effort on the part of those women who are fighting the patriarchy in the Mormon church from within. Kate Kelly, who was, I don't know, she was recently excommunicated because she kind of started the Mormon feminism, give women the priesthood type campaigns, and but I don't know, I think that there are a lot of women in the Mormon church who are there because they choose to be. I would feel like my mother, who I absolutely respect and admire and think is a very strong individual, and who works and supports her family, who put herself through school, who is a very strong person. She's also extremely religious, extremely pious, extremely, and she feels, you know, she's comfortable. I think it does go back down to the reasons for your choices. And she's choosing that because it is her faith, it's her beliefs. She feels liberated in being able to make that choice for herself. And I think it's very similar in my perception to the choice to wear hijab or not, that it's why you do it. There are women in the church who are oppressed. They don't necessarily feel fulfilled in their position in the church as their status as women. And then there are women who are there and choose to be and do feel like they are, do feel like they have equality and that they are fulfilled in living their faith. So I think it comes down to choices and why you are there and who made the choice for you, if it's an individual decision or not. So, but I think, yeah, it's a complicated issue, but that's what I would say.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes.
I just want to speak about feminism, and I noticed that word, you know, my ex-wife, she gets uptight about when people say it, but now we have it here international. So my point is that I myself, personally, here in Salt Lake City, I've been, you know, hit upside myself with feminism, and we don't talk about it in that sense. We kind of like have peripheral what we speak about, and we talk about the woman, feminism, and how that has rippled out, and when this lady was excommunicated because of it. So do you think that is kind of outside of its bounds at this time? Right now, I know that you are fighting just as hard as Black Americans, okay, through oppression, repression, suppression, etc. So do you think right now, with American feminism, do you believe that it's kind of got us men in this defensive position right now because Howardson, hit us so hard?
I can speak to that, but I would just like to. I can speak to that, but I just want to clarify that I understand your question. You're saying that it was an open question to anyone on the panel. Do we, as feminists, think that the stance of feminism has put men on the defensive?
That's precisely it.
Okay.
American feminism. American feminism.
Okay. Okay, as opposed to, well, this is about international feminism. But yeah, no, I can go off of that. It absolutely has put men on the defensive. I see that all the time. I generally don't like to speak for other people, but I would go ahead and venture a guess. I'm saying not. So yeah, I'm guessing everybody on the panel kind of agrees with me on that one. But oppressors always see the liberation of the ones that they're oppressing as some kind of loss, as something that's being taken from them, because they no longer have someone that they can, abuse and put down and feel better than. It's like Brother Malcolm. He said it right. Nobody ever won the rights by appealing
to the person who was oppressing them. They had to stand up and they have to take it. And you know, if that puts some men on the defensive, that's, you know, that's on them to work out. And we are just so happy to have so many male feminist allies here to stand with us.
Okay.
All right, does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? That's great. Okay, all right, thank you. Were there any other questions? Yes.
What do you, this question is for Gabby. What do you think what work needs to be done in unions to make sure that women receive equal representation and equal opportunities? Because, you know, as much as it is better to be union than non-union in every circumstance, there still seems to be a lot to win. Like, for instance, I did some work with somebody, and it seemed like even though those women that I was working with were clearly stronger than I was, I got selected for what supposedly runs for man work, and it just seems to me like, you know, there's something to win. And I was just wondering what your experience is and what comments you have for that.
Yeah, I love this actually. I love that you're asking me a labor question. To recap, I do labor work in the Teamsters and the UPS. On the first question with fair representation, I would say that women are represented equally because it is a union, and that's wonderful. But then you get to the second part, which is the real issue in women, or for women in workplaces, which is that they're not seen as equal, still in unions, still in working class environments. Like one experience for mine, at least when I first started, was like at UPS we have to carry like really heavy boxes. We have to lift them up like to like this high, and they could be like 100 pounds, something like that. I mean, I can like wing that myself. If it's like 80 pounds, it's fine. But the person who works on that job is often a man, and if a woman tries to work on that job, people kind of like push it away. So I don't know, it's like a working answer. For me, it's like I've gotten a lot of success and like a lot of respect in the workplace for like doing it and telling people I can do it, and asking for help and like pushing myself as an equal. And then like when people start like kind of combating me with it, then like I combat them back. Like one man I had an experience with, he was telling me about like chivalry. He was like, he didn't want me to lift this e-reg that was like 70 pounds, like an irregular package. And he was like, oh no, let me do it. And I'm like, it's my job. Like, this is literally my job. Like, let me do it. And that's what I said, and I was being pretty nice about it. And then he was like, are you one of those women who think that like chivalry is dead? And I'm like, well, it's dead in the workplace, like completely. Like, I can do this job myself. Like, I signed the papers to do the job description. Like, I'm capable. So then also just kind of like combating that, and then just doing the work that needs to be done and showing that you can do it. And I do have to give some credit to some of my coworkers at work. Like, they seem pretty progressive, and I love it. Like, a lot of my friends at work are like, yeah, you can do that. Like, it's not even a conversation. It's just like, can you help me with this? Like, it's great. Like, men will ask me to like help them lift like a 140-pound package into a trailer. I love it. And it's just like, it's whatever. But it takes work too. It's definitely not everyone.
Yeah. Was there anything else?
Yes. Well, I just want to know, how did that experiment go on wearing pants to church?
One day I had some roommates who also participated with me. So there's always strength in numbers, right? Mm-hmm. And it really was kind of like not really worthwhile. I mean, like it was great because we were there and we felt good about supporting a wider movement of people, especially people that were very passionate about it. And but it was kind of not a big deal. It ended up not being a huge deal, so I guess that's good. I mean, it's good.
All right. I think we probably have time for about two more. If there are any more questions. Nick?
I'd like to ask the panel and Lindsay what they feel the most important thing is that they can do to support women in battle against patriarchy.
Being an ally is always the first step, I think. And I like you guys all being here is already you being an ally.
Yeah, like taking time to listen. And something that helps me too is like not being afraid to like come in and like have dialogue about feminism, and like if you have like any questions, that's good. Like that's exactly it. And then also like, but not being afraid to like partake in dialogue about like, you know, like feminist theory, but like also recognizing that like women are going to be the ones that lead that. But still, like it's important to be like engaged. Like men don't have to like go over to the corner while like us women solve like women's issues. Like you guys are part of it.
Yeah, I would say number one would just be listening and letting women take the lead in respecting women's space, respecting women's ability to communicate, and especially if it comes to feminist dialogue, like Gabby said, let women guide the conversation, and yeah, just remain respectful and listening to what women have to say and applying it. Yeah.
I agree with everything. Definitely.
Okay. Well, I think these are all great suggestions, and you know, just there's lots of things I think they can do to be good women's allies. For one thing, they can come out to International Women's Day and hear from powerful women speakers, as you guys have done. You know, another thing that's like really helpful is, you know, you guys have talked a lot about like listening to what women have to say, that's important, but you know, areas where it's appropriate, you know, to speak up if, you know, you're in a situation that's mostly male dominated and somebody says something wildly inappropriate and sexist, you know, just like, what? That's not cool. Or if they're, you know, they're trying to phrase it as a, you know, just call the old I don't get it. Why is that funny? Is it so funny? You know, and just, you know, and just little things that will, you know, kind of help remind other women, like, oh, okay, well, this, you know, I just kind of went like, that was a form of oppression, but you know, that just happened. So. Oh yes.
Yeah, I think also kind of being more aware that like women like face sexism every day, and to kind of like sympathize with that, and like I mean, it's not the biggest thing, but like in that situation, like just watch, and like if you see a male being like sexist or like chauvinist, then like call him out on it, or like do something. Like it's not just like conversation, it's not just an article you read, it's like actually participating and noticing and supporting women actively, even when the conversation isn't about feminism.
And even if women aren't in the room, like if you're just with a group of your friends and they're saying sexist jokes, that's the best time to call out.
Spreading awareness is the most important thing you can do.
I just want to add to what she was saying about, I think, like awareness, because I think it's so important to understand that women are facing these things. So like she said, like I recently had my 32-year-old friend asked me if I've ever been catcalled, you know, and that was like, to me, just every day of my life, you know. So it was like, how are you not aware? But I mean, I couldn't fault him because he doesn't experience that. So I think there's just raise awareness. If you see it, be aware that it's happening, you know, like she said. So I think that's a great point. But.
Okay. Oh, well, okay, yeah. Let's take a few. We can take a few suggestions because I see that got it.
Yes, I was going to play off a little bit and say there's a TEDx speaker who's male, I forget his name, but he was just saying, you know, we always call these women issues, and he's like, to be honest with you, I feel like it's a men's issue, because it's the men's issue that, you know, we're kind of the oppressors in this situation. We should be making this a men's issue instead of women having to combat that sort of thing. But just a little way to think about it.
You should, thank you. Yes.
So, I haven't been here the whole time, but from the time that I have been here, I've heard a lot about men and I've heard a lot about women, because it is National Women's Day. But I was just wondering what you guys and panelists think both men and women can do to support transgender women. I feel like transgender women are really underrepresented and also oppressed by both sexes. So what do you guys think about that?
Thank you so much for raising that topic. I really appreciate that.
face sexism and with the additional burden of transphobia. I mean, I would like to, put that open to the panel, but I'd also love to know what you have to think. What you have to say about that.
What do I think? Both
Well, I was just
Anybody else in the audience
Yeah.
who wants to say anything?
Anybody else want to say anything about it?
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not really I'm not even trans, so I'm not really an expert or anything. I have trans friends who are talking about how it's hard for them because anytime they feel like they want to do something that's considered masculine or feminine, that's like society going to say, see, you are a male. It's really hard that they have to actually like prove that to someone instead of just claiming who they are and people accepting that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important, point. What my comrade had raised about how we of that is, really working, just making sure to just being respectful of everyone and honoring their identity, and much in the same way, I guess it can kind of be transferred across when we're discussing about, what maybe if you are, witnessing a foreign oppression or hearing somebody, make jokes that are inappropriate, just want to be like, no, that's not funny. Yeah, we just put it that way. Oh, yes, Gabby.
I think respect is huge with that, like respecting trans people, because it blows me away how disrespected trans people are, and even easy things like I identify as a woman, and it's well, are you a woman? Asking about their name or not using their preferred pronouns. So it's really important to stay informed, respect, and I think largely to also recognize heteronormativity and cisnormativity.
Yeah, I would like to add, I know we're talking about respect, and I think we're just respecting everyone and keeping in mind that, like you said, was raised on this side over here, that there are a lot of stereotypes for genders, and we have made some generalizations about men and women today, but at the same time, we need to remember that gender is flexible, that sexual orientation and gender orientation are flexible, respecting everyone's individuality and respecting them for who they are, and not prescribing certain behaviors or actions to one sex or the other, or one gender or the other, and allowing for individual differences. Because among men and among women, there are greater differences among men and among women than between men and women. And so we're more similar than we are different. But that being said, women are very different from each other, men are very different from each other. Trans people are very different from one another. So there's a lot of individuality that just needs to be accepted and respected, and allowing for those individual differences without judgment, and with supporting all individuals. And I don't know, I think that's important and something that everyone can do.
Thank you so much.
All right, we've got time for one more.
This was just another point that I wanted to make about trans women. It's important to recognize, and a lot of people, including people that I know who identify as feminists, forget that a lot of the standards that cis women are held up to are almost double for trans women. Trans women who choose not to wear makeup, not to have long hair, not to wear clothes that are considered generally feminine, tend not to be read as feminine, and people will disrespect that identity because they aren't doing things that society calls feminine. Whereas a cis woman who chooses not to wear makeup, to wear short hair, you can still say, oh, I identify as a woman, and people will accept that. And I've seen a lot of people who do identify themselves as feminists who tend to forget that, and who will also question a trans woman's status as a woman. I know people who are trans women who do not wear a lot of makeup, don't wear makeup at all, have short hair, and I know fellow feminists who will say, well, oh, so do you identify as non-binary? Are you gender fluid then? People kind of hold trans women up to a higher standard of femininity. And if you don't meet those standards, their gender is disrespected. And another really quick point, it's kind of rude to say both genders, and I've heard that thrown around a couple times, because there are more than one gender, and so it's not just male, female, boy, and girl, and it's, so saying both genders is a little bit difficult, so.
Thank you so much. All right, I just wanted to once again thank everybody for coming out. I am so glad that Jessica liked my quote from the German poster, because I wanted to end the quote from a Soviet poster, excuse me, circa 1932. March 8th is the day of rebellion of the working woman against kitchen slavery. Down with the oppression and narrow-mindedness of household work. And again, I just wanted to remind everybody, we have our banner here out front. March 12th, 7 p.m. at the Wallace F. Bennett Federal Building. We will be holding a rally for resume on the day of sentencing. Please come out to that. Women united can never be defeated. Thank you.